Breaking news: EFCC to appeal ruling on former minister's assets. Now, of course, the person we're talking about is Senator Stella Odua, which was the Minister of Aviation former Minister of Aviation. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because now, of course, we all understand that there is always a presumption of innocence for people when they are going through any sort of criminal charges or going through any sort of charges whatsoever in the court of law. Now, what actually happened in this case is that in the Federal High Court, the assets of this woman was actually released back to her. They have all been confiscated at a particular point based on embezzlement and all sort of things like that. Now, you may say that maybe those charges were not warranted, maybe those charges were just false and it's actually a form of political attack, and whatever you want to call it. Now, the fact still remains that this woman is going through this sort of charges right now, and we all understand that basically every single Nigerian politician is unclean when it comes to this. It is very, very hard for you to prove that one particular Nigerian politician isn't participating in looting of Nigerian funds. That's just the way it is. It is basically the system here. It is endemic in our system. That's what people do in politics here. And honestly, it's not only about those people in politics right now. We're talking about those people who are going to get into politics in a few years' time, or people who are going to get to those higher places. That's the next generation of people who are going to be ruling Nigeria. And most of them are saying it very unequivocally that when they get to that position, they are going to loot it. They are going to get their own share out of it. So basically, when somebody is telling you that Nigeria is doomed, that is what they're talking about. It's not only about the situation right now. We're talking about the generation that's coming up after these crazy ones in power. So if you are feeling bad about these people in power, just wait till the next generation comes into power and you're going to see real crazy madness. That is what is going to happen. Honestly, we really hope things get better in this nation, but right now on the course we are following, things are only going to get worse. I don't mean to be the pessimist around here, but it's sometimes you just have to be realistic, and sometimes being realistic may make you look like a pessimist, and that's just the situation. So now the reason why I'm saying this is that in the case of Senator Stella Odua, whether or not she did it, the fact remains that all Nigerian politicians have this tendency towards corruption. And of course, the reason why I'm actually mentioning this is because there are people in some quarters that like to say that it is impossible or very, very unlikely that women participate in corruption also. It is just everywhere. If you know the wife of the former president of Nigeria, you all understand this. It is not something that is based on gender, because we have a particular movement for women. They call themselves women in politics, and all sort of I just call them women in politics, majorly movements like that. And what they try to advocate for is that women should be given a larger quota in politics. Now I'm like, who cares about that? Now, before you start complaining and calling me sexist, the fact is that if they want larger quotas, they should contest for it. Simple. Don't go on trying to brainwash people and telling them that the only place where they can make it, or that there's a particular urgency affecting them to make them go into politics. Women that could be doing other things that will be fulfilling to them in their lives, and then you are pushing them into areas like that. Let them make their own choices. You don't have to force it on them and yell and complain about all the virtues that women have in ruling, as though they are not human beings. Now, there are obviously differences in character in some areas between men and women. For example, men tend to commit more of violent crimes than women, and it is all across. It's not something that is based on race. It is the same thing in Nigeria, it's the same thing all over Africa, it's the same thing all over the world, in the United States, in Europe, everywhere. Men tend to commit more of the violent crimes, and that's the reason why most of the population, almost 90% of the population of prisons all around the world are filled by men, because men have that tendency to be aggressive. That's just a fact. The same reason why they tend to be the ones to defend the land when it gets to the time of war, or in defending your nation against aggression from from other nations, why they men have to be the ones on the front lines, is that same reason why they tend to be the ones committing the violent crime. So I understand that there are basic differences, but the fact remains that situations like this, when it comes to looting, when it comes to corruption, it is basically about greed, and every single person has greed. Men have greed when it comes to chasing after women, and when it comes to chasing after money. The same reason too, women have greed also. Now, I'm not saying all women in this particular case have this particular type of greed, but we all understand that women, for the most part, not all, for the most part, tend to follow people who are richer. That's just the basic thing there. Now, I'm not saying only the rich or the riches of the guy is what is attracting them, but like for the most part, that is a major factor, and we all understand that. Women understand that, men understand that. That is actually what goes on. We all get it. Let's not try to pretend and complain that somebody's being like sexist about this thing. That's just the fact. We all get it. So now what I'm trying to say is that if we have established that men and women have greed, and it's just a part of the human condition, so we should be able to understand that corruption is a human condition. And of course, that is the reason why it is not only in Nigeria that you have corruption. There's corruption in Cuba, there's corruption in the United States, there's corruption all over. There's no place where there is no corruption. Now, the degree is what makes the difference. So talk about money laundering, talk about whatever it is, it happens every single place. It's just the degree to which it happens and the sort of system that is on ground in that country to checkmate and to check that sort of tendency and to prosecute that sort of tendency, and how effective it is. Can it really prosecute such cases with effectiveness without being dominated by people in power in order to do their friends a sort of favor, political favor, and whatever like that, and punish the political enemies? So those are the questions we have to observe when it comes to things like this. So again, when it comes to the aspect of women, this case just shows, even though it is basically anecdotal, it just shows again that it is not a case of men being the bad ones when it comes to looting and women being the good guys. No, it's basically every single person. One of the reasons why you don't find so many women being in the position where they are being accused of having looted is because, first of all, you have a fewer sample space when it comes to that. So when you have fewer people in a particular position, you are going to have fewer numbers of people who are going to be bad among them, because any congregation of people, there will always be people who are bad among the congregation, even in churches. So that's how it is. So if you are saying all women in politics, there will surely be some bad eggs among them, but if you have a fewer population of them, then you are definitely going to have a fewer population of the bad ones too, compared to the men, where we have most of the people in politics are men. So you're going to have a greater number of people looting the economy among the men. So basically that's what is happening. So all this crap about women going into politics and it's going to turn around the nation and whatever like that is absolute nonsense. We have seen women rule in other places around the world. We have seen women rule in Britain, we've seen them rule in Germany and all over. There is no real evidence that they rule more differently than guys rule. So that's just the basic thing that's there. So all this movement about women in politics and saying that women are going to make things a lot better if they get into politics is absolute nonsense. The evidence doesn't support that. The evidence supports that they are most likely going to act in certain ways that are like the male counterpart, just like that. So people love power. People are going to grab power no matter what. People are very greedy. That's just the way it is. Men or women, that's the situation. Is the human condition is just greed. Anyway, that's what I'm going to be talking about in this episode. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's really going to help the channel to grow. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and I will see you guys in the next video.